Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
It was a high-level tactical encounter at the World Cup when Spain took on Germany, with Germany needing to avoid defeat to still have a realistic chance of qualification on the final day. And this intriguing game finished 1-1 thanks to goals by two substitutes in Alvaro Morata and Niklas Füllkrug. The XG was fairly even, with Germany creating slightly more. But what tactics did we see? Let's take a look. And we'll begin with Spain in possession as they had more of the ball. And Spain initially looked to build up in a fairly traditional 4-3-3 with quite low fullbacks to begin with. And Germany on the other hand were looking to press fairly high up, and they could shift to a 4-4-2 with Gundogan joining Thomas Müller so that they could pressure the centre backs 1 versus 1. However, Spain's goalkeeper, Simon, is extremely good on the ball, so he could be a genuine third option in the build-up phase, so that if Germany kept pushing up, they were now heavily 3 versus 2 down in the midfield, meaning that Spain could now play into the midfield one way or the other, and then advance higher up the pitch with less challenge. And in open play we would see similar patterns at times, as once again Germany could be defending in a fairly narrow 4-4-2, and if the front two looked to press higher up, they would still be 3 versus 2 down in central regions. This is part of the reason why Flick got his wingers to be fairly narrow to begin with, but this did leave them more vulnerable in the wide regions, where Spain could find a little more space. And if the ball did go wide, or at times if the wingers were just defending fairly narrow, this would mean Spain would be able to dominate the ball in midfield regions, so Flick had to adapt. And with Gavi and Pedri pushing higher than Busquets, Flick's adaptation was simply shifting to more of a 4-2-3-1, with Gundogan looking to tie up Busquets. This would allow them to control their entry into midfield a lot more. However, Müller is aging and 2 versus 1 down, so Spain looked to utilise their centre-backs much more in the build-up, with both Rodri and Laporte in particular looking to push high up in this first phase unchallenged, and this would usually force either Gundogan or Gnabry out of position as they looked to stop that progression. And once they were dragged out, the midfield overload would commence. But in general, even in this midfield situation, Spain had ways to adapt, spearheaded by Asensio. Asensio was very willing to drop into the midfield so that sometimes it looked like a diamond. And in these situations, if the centre-back did follow, it would leave a gaping hole in the back line, although Spain were rarely able to take advantage of this. This is because, particularly in the first half, they didn't have runners in behind, which is the difference that Morata made when he came on, as he would be much more willing to take advantage of these spaces, although they were created by Asensio dropping deep. So Asensio has dropped into the midfield, and Süle has followed him deep as well. Kehrer is now 2 versus 1 down, against Olmo, who's looking to exploit the space left by Süle, as well as Jordi Alba, who has pushed higher. Note Pedri's positioning, which we'll come on to later. Süle being drawn out now means that Rudiger has to come across to cover, and now Raum, from left back, is now in a much more central region, rather than keeping his eyes strictly on Torres. So when the ball comes in, Ferran's able to run on Raum's blind side, leading to a massive chance. Again, Spain's forwards were mainly looking to drop in, so we could also see Olmo drop in deeper, drawing the fullback with him, creating space in these regions for Asensio to potentially run into. But once again, Asensio was less of a runner in behind, and much like the other forwards, wanted to come towards the ball. Olmo drops towards the ball, dragging Kehrer higher with him. This opens up a gap in the defense that Asensio could potentially have spun round into. But as discussed, he prefers to come towards the ball, which is where Morata became more impactful when he came on. But Asensio's influence in the midfield was great, as now the centre-backs were more cautious of following him into deeper regions, so he could often be the free man. And this would mean that Kimmich would usually have 2 men to worry about, so that if he tucked in on Asensio, Pedri could potentially receive between the lines, or vice versa. But Asensio dropping deep could also give Pedri more room to drop deep, often to the left-hand side where he could receive in a little bit more space, because as we discussed, Germany were fairly narrow in their 4-4-2. This would now allow Alba to push higher up on the left-hand side with Olmo. So now, if Kimmich had continued to follow Pedri, Asensio would potentially be free to receive in the midfield. Or, if Gnabry was looking to pick up Pedri, who they had to close down as he's so important to Spain's build-up play, Alba could receive, and he and Olmo would have a 2 versus 1, and they could create dangerous situations. And this general left-hand side overload would also force Germany to shift across, and Gavi would often look to push into the half space, drawing in Raum and allowing Spain to complete the switch. So Pedri has dropped deeper in the build-up, and it is Gnabry who is drawn towards him. Kimmich is sort of caught in two minds, as he had his eye on Pedri, but now Olmo has dropped into the midfield, whereas Alba has now pushed much higher up. So now the left-hand side is overloaded, as Kimmich has to come across to prevent that 2 versus 1 down, meaning that Goretzka now has to vacate his position, meaning Gavi has more space in the half space, and Raum has to keep an eye on him. So now Olmo is able to play the switch into Ferran Torres, who draws Raum, whilst Gavi makes the run into the space. Pedri is beginning to drop deep into the left-hand side, and Gnabry has an eye on him. So now there is 2 men outside of Gnabry's positioning, and Busquets is able to find Olmo. And now, as Kera is 2 versus 1 down, Jordi Alba can be found in plenty of space, and his cross is turned in by Morata. But Flick is no slouch, so what did he do when Germany were in possession? And how did Spain look to press? Much like Spain, Germany were looking to build short, but Spain were much more aggressive in the press, so that when the centre-backs received the ball, they wanted to press them man-to-man. But where Germany committed a midfielder to be the second man, Spain instead often got Torres to tuck in alongside Asensio to create the front two, and keep pressure on the centre-backs. So to prevent the centre-backs being in settled possession, they were willing to give Raum a lot of room, and were happy for him to receive if need be, at which point Carvajal would then look to initiate the late press. But another reason they were also willing to leave Raum in this space is because Musiala tended to tuck infield. So this would naturally mean when Carvajal pushed up onto Raum, Musiala wasn't immediately positioned to take advantage of that space. As a result, Raum ended up having the most touches for Germany, but wasn't able to make the most of it. But still, Musiala gave Germany advantages in the central area by tucking into these regions, as where Pedri and Gavi were looking to be man-to-man on the pivots, he and Gundogan were often 2 versus 1 on Busquets, so either Musiala could drop in to look to pick up the ball, or Gundogan could do the same as well. At times we did see Spain committing a centre-back in order to prevent that overload, but this led to a massive chance for Germany. So once again, Asensio and Ferran are forming the front two, whilst Pedri sits on Kimmich and Gavi on Goretzka. Musiala has dropped in, meaning that he can receive the pass from Rudiger, whilst Carvajal had been looking to press Raum as discussed. In this case, Rodri pushes high from centre-back, and this now means that Gundogan is the free man between the lines. So Germany are able to work it past Busquets, who was the last defence in midfield, and eventually get it to Gnabry, who gets a shot on goal, although he was offside. But the game changed for Germany when they made substitutions, and it wasn't just Füllkrug who made the difference at centre forward. Sané also came on for Gundogan, as did Klostermann for Kehrer. This gave Germany a few advantages. Before, Gnabry was a right footer on his right side, so he preferred to attack the byline, although he can do both. Whilst on the other hand, Musiala had to drift into his preferred position rather than starting there. But this now changed, with Sané going on the right so that he was inverted, as was Gnabry, whilst Musiala could now fully flourish in the attacking midfield role, playing off of a big centre forward. This was backed by Raum being as aggressive as he was before, and Klostermann also pushing a lot higher up, meaning that if they wanted to, the wingers could drift infield as well, or they could stay wide and create that overload. And we did see both of them, Sané in particular, operating in more central regions, and he was often able to operate in this right half space. Now being in closer proximity, with runners like Goretzka also willing to join, Germany were able to combine much more, and could even go long to the big centre forward from deep in order to play over the Spanish press, and this meant that they had more danger, even contributing to the goal. Germany get the ball after a turnover, and we can see that Sané is operating much more central alongside Musiala, whilst Goretzka is also always a willing midfield runner, and Klostermann finds Sané in this more central position. Musiala from his attacking midfield position makes even more runs forward than usual, and Sané is able to find him, and he can combine with the big centre forward. Overall, this was a brilliant game from a tactical point of view, and both sides won't mind the result too much, although Germany would have much preferred the win. From a tactical point of view, Enrique had the upper hand slightly, although Flick held his own, meaning Enrique earns an 8, whilst Flick gets a 7. But what are your thoughts? Drop them down below.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon.
Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out.
But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.